Welcome to week 12 of our second year of our journey through the Word. This week we continue to walk with Mark as he declares to us the gospel of Jesus Christ. We begin our journey this week with going with Jesus on the Sabbath to a synagogue in the area of Galilee. And it's here that he heals a man with a withered hand. The Pharisees see this as Jesus working on the Sabbath. And you see people who are so bound by their legalism that they can't see when God is moving and when God is doing good. And so these Pharisees, so disgruntled, leave from there. And it tells us that they went out to seek some Herodians so that they could conspire with them to get rid of Jesus. The question we ask is, who are Herodians that these Pharisees are going out to find? Well, the Herodians were those who supported Herod Antipas, and most likely from Greek backgrounds, but some of them could have been even of Jewish background, but more likely of Greek background. And they supported Herod Antipas. Of course, they'd support Herod Antipas because it's Herod who built the city of Tiberias. And the city of Tiberias, for those who have been to Israel, you know that it's on the west shore of the Sea of Galilee. It's the biggest city around the Galilee today. And so this city was built by Herod Antipas. And we also see, it's called the city of Tiberias. And we also see that they paid money. Herod had paid money to many of the Jewish higher echelon to try to gain their favor. And so these were people who were in favor of the Roman occupation. And so these were the ones that the Pharisees went to try to league with and to conspire with to get rid of Jesus. After this, we come to an event that we've already looked at before, and this is the event of the demon-possessed man of Gerasene. And we again hear the story recounted through Mark, and he tells us of how this man was screaming, and he would cut himself, and he wouldn't keep clothes on. He was naked, and he had this inhuman strength. When we look at these symptomatic things, these are symptomatic things of demonic activity. Today, these things are also in our society, but we are so sophisticated that we want to look at them as medical problems only and not consider that maybe we're dealing with demons. I've met cutters, and I'm sure many of you have as well, that yes, they are in deep pain and deep turmoil. And as a result of this inner turmoil, they will cut themselves, severely cut themselves until they bleed. And some people want to say, well, it's a psychological condition. And I'm not saying that it can't be psychological, but is it psychological because of the torment that they are being tormented by demonic activity, either internal or external? And also the screaming and the nakedness. Greg and I experienced a bit of this while he was in the hospital recently. And there was a person in a room down the ways, and he kept screaming out and definitely was incoherent and didn't have his full senses, not in his right mind. And he kept screaming these things out that made no sense. But the nurses would go in there and they would get so frustrated because this man would pull off all his clothes. We saw this again in another place in the hospital, where another one who wasn't in their right mind kept pulling off all their clothes. And as I was listening to these things and observing, I thought, God, we are so sophisticated that we want to see this as, again, a mental thing or a physical problem. But how many times are we attributing something that's demonic to medical or to a physical problem? And so we have a tendency in our society to be too sophisticated to recognize demonic activity that's right in our midst today. And so Jesus, we know he heals this man and sends the demons out into the pigs. We remember from before, and we see it again, how the man wants to go with Jesus, and Jesus says, no, you stay here. You proclaim what has happened to you. And so this man is left in the Decapolis. And so again, we have to ask the question, where is the Decapolis? What is the Decapolis? And the Decapolis was a league of 10 cities that were, 9 of the cities were east of the Jordan. And there was one city that was west of the Jordan. The 9 that were on the east of the Jordan were mostly in that area of the inheritance of Manasseh. You might remember back when we were looking at the children of Israel coming in to take the land, and each tribe was being given their portion. And you may remember that Reuben and Manasseh and Gad, they wanted to stay on the other side. Half of the tribe of Manasseh came in, but half of the tribe stayed on the other side of the Jordan. And as you look at the cities of the Decapolis, you'll see that most of it lies in the area of the inheritance of Manasseh. And so it doesn't surprise me that Jesus not only proclaimed the kingdom and preached his message in the area of Israel that was that was west of the Jordan, but he also went east of the Jordan into where those tribes had their portion of inheritance as well. Once again, I'm putting a map for you, a couple of maps for you in the descriptive area. And right below this video, there's that description. You will see a map of the 10 cities that made up Decapolis, and also you'll have a map of the regions where the region of Decapolis was. I mentioned to you that one of the cities was west of the Jordan. That city that was west of the Jordan, by the Greeks, it was called Scythopolis. This city, it was a huge city. And although they may have called it Scythopolis, those of you who have been to Israel will find this very enlightening. To those of you, it may not have as much weight. Just come to Israel. I guarantee you go, oh, this place. Because the city by its Hebrew name was called Bet Shean. Behind me, we are on the road, the entryway to Bet Shean. And this was the city that was the capital of the 10 cities. I have no doubt in my mind that Jesus walked these streets. The Greeks of this area of the Decapolis, they had a strong prejudice against the Jews. And so again, I'm giving you the maps of these areas, and you'll see that the area of Decapolis in purple, as you look east of the Jordan, it's a large area, but then you see that little portion that comes west of the Jordan, and that's where you'll find Bet Shean, the capital of the Decapolis. We are told that after Jesus sets this man free, he leaves from there, he goes other places, he goes to Tyre. I hope you'll follow all this on the map, because Tyre is quite a distance from the area of Decapolis. But Jesus, we're told, he left Tyre and he goes to the Decapolis. When he gets to the Decapolis, we find that he's welcomed by at least 4,000, which it counts the men, but often doesn't count the women and children. But he's welcomed by at least 4,000 who are eager to hear his teachings. You remember when he healed the man, they wanted him to get out of their region, get out of Decapolis, leave us alone. But now, when Jesus comes back, they are very eager for him to come, and they are ready to sit and listen to his teachings. We see that Jesus, he did more than one time, he fed the multitudes. We see before he comes to Decapolis to feed the 4,000, we find just a few chapters before, Jesus is feeding 5,000 in the region of Galilee among the Jews. This is where he has 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they collect 12 baskets of leftovers. Why 12 baskets? Because it's symbolic of each of the tribes of Israel. He is in that area, that land of Israel. And so it's very significant that there are 12 baskets of leftovers. And then we see Jesus going to the Decapolis, where he feeds 4,000 in the Decapolis. This time he feeds them with 7 loaves and a few small fish. We aren't told how many. And so we see that there are two feedings of multitudes, one taking place in the area predominantly Israelites, then over in the Decapolis, which has a predominant representation of Greeks. And so from there, once again, we have an account of Jesus going to his own hometown. And here he began to teach them, and they're amazed at his teaching, but he again can't do much there. And Jesus looks at these people and he says that they are like sheep that have no shepherd. And it says, and he began to teach them, sheep without a shepherd isn't characterized by people who have a lack of leaders. There were a lot of leaders in Israel, but what did they lack? They lacked good, solid, spirit-filled, God-led teaching. And so today, when we are in places that there might be a church that has all the programs and lots of people there, but it still may be a church that has no shepherd, because Jesus said a shepherd is where there is no good, solid teaching that will put within us the heart and the word of God. Like David said, your word have I treasured in my heart that I might not sin against you. God, let us have shepherds in the church today, not just leaders. And then as we go on walking with Mark, I find, just as we saw a pattern in the book of Lamentation, that there was that interesting pattern that we looked at last week. I also find that there are some hidden patterns in Mark's writing. And once again, we have to remember that these writings are inspired by the Spirit. All scripture is given by inspiration of God. It is God-breathed. And so as we see these patterns, they're not just a coincidence. And in these patterns in Mark, this week you'll see 3 specific patterns of 7s. You'll look at the healing of the synagogue official's daughter, Mark 5:35 through 41. You'll look at Jesus feeding the 5,000, Mark 6:33 through 42. And then you'll look at Jesus's feeding of the 4,000 in Mark 8, verses 1 through 9. What I find so fascinating about them is that as Jesus begins to bring the miracle about, it says that he does certain things, like he took the bread, he gave thanks, he broke it. And when it says he looked to heaven, he sighed. Why are all these things there? And as you count those things, each one of them that he does to bring about the miracle, you're going to find in each instance, he does 7 things. Now, some will say that 7 is the number of completion. there may be some truth to that, but I don't believe that it's the main truth, because we know that the word seven, we've talked about it before, that the Hebrew word seven, shavah, means oath. It means promise. It's linked to covenant. And as I look at these things, I see God bringing his covenant to pass, opening up the promises that he's given to mankind and fulfilling his promise. So yes, we do see completion, but more than that, completion of what? Completion of the covenant. And so I, again, in your description, I put a template down there, very simple template. It has each of these scripture references. And as you're going through, you might want to jot down, what are the 7 things that Jesus did to bring about that miracle? There are new treasures to be found each time you journey through the word. There is no way that as you go through one time, you're going to find all that's in there. You'll barely, if this is your first time through the word, you will barely scratch the surface of what's there to be found. People who say, well, I read through the Bible. I'm thinking, you found, to read through the Bible once is like picking up a grain of sand on a beach and saying, I brought the whole beach home. There is too much to be found. And so this is a lifelong book for a lifelong journey. So fall in love with the mysteries. Look for those breadcrumbs. Watch for the signs. There is so much to be found. So enjoy your journey. And I'll see you again next week.